Great. Then the following things can happen. IT can click record, and Michael can call the meeting to order.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order and immediately go over a couple of the rules that were laid out in the introductory email, just in case not everyone got a chance to read them or if you've forgotten since reading the email. I would ask that you please only use the chat for points of order, points of inquiry, or to be added to the speaking order. If any information does need to be shared with the assembly, then an officer of council will share it in the chat. And if you carry on any personal conversations or commentary in the chat, then that may lead to you getting removed from the assembly. If you are speaking, please address all your comments to me, the chair. This will avoid direct confrontation between your co-delegates and help ensure that we maintain civility throughout the meeting. And unless you're speaking, please keep your microphone muted. It shouldn't be a problem because most of you will be muted by default anyways. But if you're not muted, then you will be muted, so just be aware of that. For gallery members, if you did not get a chance to request speaking time in advance by sending an email to speaker@wusa.ca, then please reach out to one of your counselors who will sponsor you on the floor. The way that will work is you will ask your counselor for some speaking time. Your counselor will be added to the speaking order and sponsor you for speaking on a motion. And then by default, Abby will second all of those motions, and then I will take them on consensus. If anybody objects to somebody speaking, they can raise their concern in that time. Technically, like by the rules, you need a 2/3 majority to be added to the speaking order in this way, as you're not a member of the council. But I don't see any problem with adding people. It shouldn't be an issue. When we are enforcing rules, if you engage in disorderly conduct continually, I understand that the council has approved that you will receive 2 warnings, and on the 3rd, the speaker will put forward a privilege motion to eject you from the assembly. So just be careful that you're not speaking out of turn, inappropriately using Teams and the Teams chat. Failing to yield on request by the speaker. So if I ask you to stop speaking for a moment, then and you don't, then that could be counted as an infraction. And if you address council during voting, so once I have called the question, which is to say I've asked for people to vote on the matter, and if you continue speaking during that time, then that is a big no-no under the rules of order. All right, with that out of the way, we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. The motion reads, be it resolved, the assembly approve the agenda as presented. I'm going to take this one to a vote because I'm feeling spicy today. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Seconded by Stephanie. I will take Abby Simpson as the mover. Or Vincent. Vincent Macri moves. Perfect. Is there any discussion on this motion? Once we approve the agenda, any subsequent changes to the agenda, including the order or I think splitting of motions is what? No, never mind. Any changes to the order will require a 2/3 majority vote, just to note. Seeing no discussion, I'm going to move this to a vote. Can I get all those opposed? Any abstaining?
Michael, for simplicity, if we're doing a vote on consensus, you can just raise your hand using the raise hand function.
And seeing no abstentions or opposition, this motion carries unanimously. And we can move on to agenda item 3. Approval of the minutes from the March 24th, 2020 annual general meeting. Motion, which is recommended for adoption by the board of directors. Be it resolved that the assembly approves the minutes from the March 24th, 2020 annual general meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this item? Abby Simpson moves. And Megan Town seconds. Is there any discussion on this item, starting with the mover and seconder? Okay, I'm not seeing any discussion. So we're going to move this straight to a vote. As before, can I get any opposition? And any abstentions? Seeing neither abstentions nor opposition, this motion carries unanimously, and we move on to item number 4. Receiving the auditor's report and financial statements. This item will be presented for the Assembly's benefit by the VP Operations and Finance, Elena Guevara, on behalf of the Board of Directors. Elena, go ahead.
Am I sharing my screen, or is someone else?
You can share your screen. I'll stop sharing. While we're waiting here for Alana to share her screen, I've just put in the chat for those who need a bit of a refresher. If you would like to be added to the speaking order, you put a 1 in the chat. If you're directly responding to someone who's already spoke, you can put a 2 in a chat. That way we know to add you to the speaking order, which allows me to unmute your microphone. Or not unmute your microphone, give you the permission to unmute your microphone.
Can everyone see that? Okay. Still on the screen when I do that? Okay. Okay, everyone. Hi. I'm here to do the fun part and talk about audit. These are our board-approved audited financial statements for the previous year. So that would be Seneca's and Michael's year. Nothing too great, so I'm just going to scroll down to the part that I'm going to be talking about, and then I will get to my script. Yeah, so there are several funds shown on the statement. The first is the general fund. This is where the total fees, full-time and part-time, are recorded. That's for clubs, events, services, governance, SLC facilities fee, academic support. You can see the complete breakdown on our website. All of our operations for our commercial services, iMuse, Used Bookstore, Maker's Kitchen, and other services like clubs, Glow, Lays, Campus Life, and governance budgets also flow through this general fund. All of the money is free to be spent as we see as a corporation. It generally goes through board and council before making decisions. There are a couple highlights from the year. This was the first year of Student Choice Initiative where some fees were designated as optional and students could choose not to pay them. That would be for fall 2019 and winter 2020. And then we had COVID shutdown for operations and campus in March 2020. There was an increase in total assets of $3.3 million, whereas last year we had only increased by $1.3 million. So there was a $2 million difference in our increase of our assets from the previous year. And the general fund had a surplus of $48,227, which is a drastic improvement by $180,000 from the previous year. So well done there again, I think. And then the overall organization, which includes all of the funds, realized a surplus of $214,492, which is down from the 1.3 million that it was last year, but given all of the considerations that I noted above, that is where we have found ourselves. We are still in a surplus, so I'd say we did pretty well given our circumstances. Does anyone have any questions or concerns or anything? Also, please feel free to email me at vpof@wusa.ca if you would like to ask questions after this meeting.
Okay, discussion is now open to the floor. If you would like to speak, please put 1 or 2 in the chat and I will call on you. Thank you, Alana, by the way. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Oh, there we go. Samar, go ahead.
One moment, let me change their permissions. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Just a quick comment. Can we get access to the GM minutes and the financial statements? I believe the links on the agenda are not working for the public. That would be great. Thank you.
The financial statements are on our website. I can post the link to that in the chat if that helps.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, who's running the academic external account? Okay, cool. It's withdrawn. Any other new points or direct responses? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Please find the link now in the chat. Michael Semeta, direct response.
I was just going to say the GM minutes from last year are on the general meetings page. They're at the bottom in the linked areas for minutes from past general meetings. They are incorrectly labeled as the agenda, but they are indeed the minutes, is what I will mention.
Thank you. I believe the question was about the auditor's report and financial statements, but that's good to note that they're incorrectly labeled anyways. It was both, okay. All right, not seeing any more points for discussion. So going once, going twice. All right, thank you, everyone. We were just receiving the presentation there, so we're going to move on to item number 5, election to the board of directors. 5A, a report of the director candidate screening panel. This report is going to be accompanied by a short oral report by the chair of the committee and is presented for information. So can I get the chair of the committee to come forward and present the report?
Good afternoon, everyone. As the chair of the director screening panel, I'm happy to present our final report. The role of this panel is to review the applications of each candidate for the board of directors, interview them, and make a recommendation on whether they are qualified to sit on the board. This is so you, the delegates, can make an informed decision when voting for candidates running for the board. Being on the board of directors requires experience in governance and knowledge of how WUSA operates. The board is responsible for the financial health, human resources, and risk management of the organization, as well as overseeing the executives. So it's very important that all candidates are vetted. There are 3 types of recommendations that this panel has made. In favor, the panel's determined that this candidate is highly qualified for the role of director and recommends membership elect them to the board. The second type of recommendation is no opinion. The panel has no opinion on the candidate and is comfortable with the membership making a choice to elect or not elect them to the board. And finally, against. The panel has concluded this candidate would not serve well in the role of director and recommends the membership not vote to elect them to the board. There are two types of elections for the board: seats reserved for incoming councillors and seats open to students at large. One of the at-large seats is for a 2-year term, and 2 of these seats are for a 1-year term. We will be holding the councillor director elections first, and then the at-large elections. For the councillor directors, there were 2 positions open and 2 candidates applied. Recommended unanimously in favor was Canon Sharma, and recommended in favor was Marie Jolicol Bécotte. For the at-large directors, there was 3 positions, one of which is a 2-year term and 2 of which are a 1-year term. 7 candidates applied for these 3 positions, and all of them said they would serve either 1 or 2 years, except the ones that I'll be pointing out who only wish to serve 1 year. Recommended unanimously in favor was Abby Simpson, who wishes to serve a 1-year term, and Samer Zumont. Recommended in favor was Alana Guevara and Nunso Munim, who wishes to serve for a 1-year term. The panel has no opinion on Harleen Bandal, and the panel voted against recommending Narayan Subramoniam and Carl Zhu. I'd like to recognize the other 5 members of this panel who put in a significant amount of work into this process. I would also like to thank every candidate that put their name forward and participated in our selection process. I wish you all the best of luck.
All right, thank you very much, Alex, for presenting that information. Given that there are 4 at-large candidates who were recommended, and there are 3 spots for at-large directors, I think it'd probably be best if we move into committee of the whole to decide whom the delegates want to appoint to the board of directors. And then when we come out of the committee of the whole, we will bring with us the names with which to fill the blanks on the motion 5B election of directors. Before we go into the committee of the whole, is there any discussion on Alex's report? Any new points, direct responses? John Hunt, go ahead.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. What is the purpose of us moving into committee of the whole?
The committee of the whole is a bit of a looser rules-wise way of running the meeting that will allow us to more quickly come to discussion. Like, you won't have to move items, and things won't be enforced as, like, the rules won't be enforced as heavily, just to promote discussion. But if you object to going to the committee of the whole, let me know. Any further discussion? Abby Simpson, go ahead.
So I just kind of want to clarify if this means that we will no longer need vote.wusa elections.
Oh, I suppose that's the way we did it last year too, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay, good point. Nope, that's entirely good point. We will probably be best served by doing that, actually. So we will not use committee of the whole. We will use the vote.wusa that's been painstakingly set up for this purpose. Okay, is there anyone who has discussion on the report or who would like to discuss the candidates? I would expect to see at least some discussion, noting that there are 4 people recommended for 3 positions. Edward, go ahead.
Thank you for that. I guess my question was, Is the report still accessible? Because I am not able to actually read it, so I'm not sure if the link's set up properly or if anyone else is able to access it.
I know that
have,
I can access it.
yeah, the link should be included as supporting document on the agenda.
Okay, then if it's just an issue on my side, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Edward. Kenan, go ahead.
First of all, I can't access the link either. And my second question was going to be, any of the people who are running for the 2-year clerk position, are they going to be graduating in a year so that they'll basically only be able to serve for 1 year? Could the panel talk about that?
Okay, direct response, Alexander Ayer.
To respond to Cannon's question, all candidates who stated that they were available to serve for 2 years will not be graduating before their term is over.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the candidates? Anybody else unable to see the report from the director screening panel? Okay, go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, I just want, like, just arising from, I guess, kind of Cannon's clarification, but kind of just to make sure that my team on the back end understands correctly. Alex, does that mean that the people who have indicated that they are only eligible for 1-year positions should not be on the 2-year ballot? My understanding was that all directors are eligible for all of the positions. We'd go from the 2-year ballot to the 1-year ballot, as any director at any time has the ability to leave the board.
Alex, go ahead and respond.
To respond to that, there were, I believe, 2 candidates who, for at large, who stated that they only wished to apply for 1 year. So in response to that, it was my intention that they would only be listed as candidates for the 1-year term.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on the board of directors item? I'm not seeing anybody raising any new points or direct responses in the chat. So Matthew Schwartz, go ahead.
Should be unmuted now.
That is Matthew Casale, it looks like. You should be able to unmute now.
Sorry, just wanted clarification. My understanding, like I thought there were two 2-year positions and one 1-year position. is it that there is 2 one-year positions and 1 2-year position? Because that's what was said earlier.
Go ahead, Alex.
There is 1 position open for a 2-year term and 2 positions open for a 1-year term, because there are 2 2-year term positions open on the board, and one of those is currently filled by a director who's going to be serving the 2nd year of his 2-year term next year. So to clarify, 1 candidate can win the 2-year spot, and there are 2 spots open for the 1-year spot.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cannon, go ahead. Sorry, point of order from Ben Easton first.
Hi there. My understanding as the present chair of the board and I guess the incoming president, so take this with a grain of salt, but my understanding is that the 2, at last year's general meeting, there were 2 directors elected to 2-year positions and 2 directors elected to 1-year positions. The intention being that they would eventually both become 2-year terms elected in rotation, meaning that the 2 positions of 1 year, which are expiring at the end of this governing year, will actually be elected to 2-year positions, thus starting the election in rotation. So I believe that Director Eyre has perhaps provided a poor interpretation. So my understanding is that there are 2 at-large 2-year positions to be elected here, and 1 1-year at-large to take over the second half of my 2-year term.
Perhaps Abby could provide some clarification or confirmation of this.
I would like to confirm that Ben's interpretation is correct, or at least that's how we set up the elections. So I hope that that's correct. So that's, I guess, my addition, but Cannon and John are queued up to be next on the speaking order, Michael.
Yep. So first we'll take Cannon and then we'll take John. So go ahead, Cannon.
I was just going to say what Ben said, and I do believe Alex misinterpreted something based on what happened in last year's GM and the discussion that happened there. So I think there should be 2 at-large 2-year positions and 1 at-large 1-year position for this year.
Thank you, Cannon. John?
Yeah, I was more responding to the point of order, saying that as your friendly neighborhood parliamentarian, Ben is correct.
Okay. Alex, direct response.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I recognize that the chair of the board has the authority to determine the final decision on this. The panel must have been operating under a false interpretation of the new changes with the rules on electing directors. However, it shouldn't really affect anything as long as the IT system is set up for the correct way to vote in the new directors.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for providing clarity on this topic. Are there any more points of discussion? All right. I'm not seeing anybody raising any points of discussion, so we are going to navigate to the voting. I will pass the baton over to Abby to explain how the vote.wusa is set up and how to go about voting.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So when I give James, who's on the back end, say hi to James, everyone, he is going to open up the elections, which will happen on vote.wusa.ca. So a reminder to councillors, the voting list, which you are on, was given to our team. So only councillors will have access to vote.wusa.ca. So if you are a member of the gallery, you can let your councillor know your preference. So you'll go to vote.wusa.ca. We'll begin with the 1 year director position and then go to the 2 year director position. So one person will be elected to the 1 year. From those who've indicated 1 year, the person who is not successful will then move and be eligible for the 2 year, is my understanding of how that process will work. All right, that is what we did last year. So at least that is my interpretation of how that election will go down. I don't think there's anything else anyone needs to know. I think for the most part, if you are an elected councillor, you're familiar with how vote.wusa.ca works because hopefully you voted for yourself. So you'll go in and select your preference.
Okay, I have 2 points of information. First one to Steph and second one to Kenan.
Give me a moment while I queue them both up. Steph should be good.
Go
Hi,
ahead, Steph.
I was just wondering if we could get guidance from the chair on whether incoming exec should be voting on this motion or whether or not we should abstain due to conflict of interest.
Are you asking for me, the chair of the assembly, or the chair of the board?
For you, the chair of the assembly.
Okay. I don't remember what we did last year. I'm gonna actually defer to the interpretation of the chair of the board on this one.
He's the incoming president.
Ah, shoot.
I can provide interpretation unless there's an objection.
Go ahead, Ben.
So as this meeting is constituted as a meeting of delegates, the delegates, in other words, councillors, have a legal duty to act on the behalf of their constituents. And I believe that the director screening panel's work serves to allay the potential conflict that may be arising by electing their future employers as directors. So I would advise the chair not to rule that there is a conflict of interest preventing incoming executives from voting, who are councillors themselves.
I agree. That sounds reasonable. So please do vote as per your mandate as a councillor. Kenan, go ahead with your point of information.
This is in regards to what Abby said, how elections are working. And sorry if I create more confusion, but I just want to clarify. We are electing the council director first, followed by the 2 year at large, and then the people who are unsuccessful for the 2 year at large move to 1 year at large, correct?
I can answer the second half because my understanding of kind of what Michael had mentioned earlier is that because we only have 2 people to fill 2 positions that we'd be moving forward and filling the blank. Michael, before I go forward, is that a correct? Or would you like us to be voting?
Yeah, you would need to still get the quorum requirement, so you would have to make sure that people aren't voted no on. Like people could feasibly vote no unanimously on Kenan or something.
So that would be correct. We'd begin with the councillor. So James, if you're listening, we'll begin with the councillor elections to allow for the yes/no vote, and then move to 1 year. The issue is right now, Michael, the 1 year is open. So if we could do councillor last, that would actually be my preference because the 1 year elections is currently open. So to answer Kenan's second half of the question, we will do the 1 year election for those who have indicated that they would like to fill the 1 year seat. Then the individual who is unsuccessful will be eligible to fill the 2-year seat. Will move to be eligible.
We'll take direct response from Cannon, and Vicky, you've been added to the speaking list.
And from my understanding from last year, and I could be just that's how this we did last year, so I'm getting confused a bit. We did counselors, then we did 2-year at large, because someone who is eligible for 2 years is also eligible for 1 year at large, kind of a thing. Whereas if you do 1 year at large first, then someone might have to resign if they go to the 2-year at large and get elected for that term.
So that's originally how I had it done up, but the chair of the director screening panel indicated that the intent was that those who are eligible for 1 year would run for 1 year and then be able to go and be elected for 2 year.
Okay.
If the chair of the panel would like to confirm that, we can switch to a 2 year and a 1 year.
To respond,
Go ahead, Alex.
To respond to Abby's question, so what I recommended earlier was that the 1 year candidates only run in the 1 year election. I don't have any official recommendation in the order in which you do the 2 year and 1 year, but last year what we did was we held the 2 year elections first, and then because all of the candidates who were eligible for the 2 year elections also indicated they wished to run in the 1 year elections, all the unsuccessful candidates from the 2 year elections then ran in the 1 year elections, which happened after. I'll defer to the chair as to which method to use, but I see no issue in using last year's method, where the 1 year candidates only ran in the 1 year, and the 2 year candidates ran in both the 2 year election and 1 year election.
Okay, so it doesn't matter when we do the councillor candidate election because there will never be any carryover from that. We don't have more candidates than we have spots. But I agree with some of the arguments presented in the past few minutes that we should handle the 2 year election before the 1 year election. Now, I will take Vicky and then Megan, and then we will talk about sponsoring an at-large student for a point. Go ahead, Vicky.
I'm wondering if it's possible just to abstain, at least the at-large, as Alex, who is the board chair of the screening panel, knows why, as I was on it too. I just would like to abstain if possible for very, I feel like, good reasons. If Alex wants to, I guess, respond more in depth to why, because I was able to abstain for voting on the screening panel of a candidate for very good reasons, but that's all.
Okay. A response has been requested from Alex.
When it comes to abstaining, I don't know what the IT system looks like, but I'm guessing you can just choose not to vote in any of the elections or vote for less than 4 candidate or 2 candidates for the 2 year. But I'll let Michael answer that question because I'm not sure how IT set it up.
Okay. If it's been set up like previously, then yes, there will be an option to abstain. Simply rank as many as you wish and do not rank the names you wish to abstain on. Now we're going to go to a new point from Megan Town.
Yeah, I'd like to move to sponsor Chen Chai for a speaking turn. My apologies if I pronounced your name wrong.
Okay. Noting that there are several people who offered to sponsor Chen, we'll take Megan as the mover and Vincent as the seconder for the motion to sponsor Chen, and then I'm going to take this on consensus. If you would like to object to the sponsoring of Chen, please raise your hand now. All right, seeing no objections, Chen has been sponsored for a speaking turn. Chen, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for sponsoring me. Chen is how you pronounce my name. Thank you. So I'd just like to ask a quick question, given that this is a general meeting designed to collect votes and input from WUSA's general members as a whole. How come only the councillors are going to be allowed to vote in this election at vote.wusa.ca, if that's my understanding? Thank you.
Thanks, Chen. I'm going to take it to Ben Easton for a direct response.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks, Chen. That's a good question. This meeting is a bit of a special case of a general meeting because of public health restrictions. Typically, a general meeting, as defined in the bylaws, is a group of 200 students who are members of the organization who come together to do the same jobs that we're conducting here. However, due to our inability to congregate in such a way, we have the authority through the Corporations Act to conduct the meeting of a general, conduct the business of a general meeting through a delegated meeting of Students' Council. So basically, the membership is represented through the councillors for the respective constituents. I guess it is less than ideal for obviously having as many students participate as possible. However, students, the delegates have a legal duty to act in the interest of their constituents. So in other words, students like yourself. And members all have the right to speak at a general meeting per the Corporations Act. So while it's less than ideal, it is reasonable and like according to the law.
Thank you, Ben. I have a direct response from Vincent. Go ahead.
Hello. Thanks for that, Ben. Well, I understand that may have been the case for, say, like last year's general meeting. We're like a year into this pandemic. I think we should have had plenty of time to prepare and plan for this. So I'd like to know like what thought and plans had went into the possibility of allowing all members to participate in the general meeting. Thanks.
Okay. Next up on my speaking list, I have Kenan, followed by Edward. Go ahead, Kenan.
Hi. I think, like, while I agree this is a topic we should be discussing, I don't think we should be discussing this during a board election. I would like to go forward and call the question. We have spent, I think, enough time on this.
Okay. So we have Kenan calling the question. Can I get a seconder for the motion to call the question?
A second.
Sorry, I didn't catch who that was. John?
That was John Hunt. Yes.
Okay. John Hunt seconds. Now, a call to question, I believe, requires a 2/3 majority vote. So we're just going to go ahead and take that vote. There's no discussion on a call to question. Point of order, John Hunt.
Sorry, I just got a reminder. We're in committee of the whole.
No, we're not. We did not actually move to committee of the whole.
We didn't? Okay,
No.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're just going to move to the vote. Can I get all those opposed to calling the question immediately? Oops. Can I get any abstentions to calling the question? Okay, the motion carries unanimously with one abstention. We are now going to move immediately to voting on the directors to fill the blanks. So councillors, please all go to vote.wusa.ca, sign in, and we should have up and open the vote for the 2-year terms. Abby, what do you think? 5 minutes or 10 minutes to complete the voting?
I have no preference. How long do you think people will? Let's do 10 minutes, and then if we'll kind of come back here, or like if you vote and then need to use the bathroom or something, then we'll be back at, what is that, 2:05?
Okay, voting will be open for 10 minutes, after which point we will close voting, see the results, and then move on to the 1-year elections. So please go ahead and vote for the directors under the 2-year appointment. If it's not open right now, it will be very soon.
I've just got confirmation that it should be open now, so if you were on the page and didn't see it, please refresh.
Point of information, John Hunt.
No, I'm not really supposed to talk while we're voting, but are we really doing 10 minutes per vote? That's half an hour of voting.
I want to see how long it takes people. And this is a good opportunity for people to also use the washroom if they need to. But I imagine that subsequent votes will only require 5 minutes because this is probably the largest election right now anyways.
Okay, thanks.
Plus, noting that there are some people who are unable to access the report from the director screening panel, this gives them also a little bit of time to skim it. Point of information to Vincent.
Yeah, I'm just curious on the election method. I know that with our normal WUSA elections, if you don't like meet the threshold because ballots get exhausted, then the seat is left vacant. Are we using that rule, or are we just like electing it without worrying about meeting the threshold if ballots are exhausted?
To my understanding, and I alluded to this earlier for the councillor elections, we will still require a threshold to be met based on what voting rules exist in the WUSA bylaws and procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are 3 minutes left in voting. If at any point before 2:05 every eligible person has voted, I'm sure that we can close voting at that point. Vicky, please limit the chat to official things.
We are currently at 22, so if you still haven't had an opportunity to go on and vote, please do so.
All right, we're down to under 1 minute left. Okay, it is 2:05 p.m. Voting should now have closed. Abby, do you have the results immediately, or do you want to move on to 1-year spot? I suppose we need the results.
We need the results to be able to move on. I personally will not be receiving the results. The chair of the board will be receiving the results of the election. So Ben, please unmute once you have them.
Okay. Ben, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So I just received an email, and I will need a second to understand what I'm looking at. So please bear with me.
It does take a minute to parse.
Okay, it appears that the elected candidates to the 2-year at-large director seats are first Abby Simpson and second Alana Guevara. Carl Zhu was eliminated in the second round. Narayan Subramoniam, I'm sorry for my pronunciation of your name, was eliminated in the third round. Chakwanansu Monami was eliminated in the 4th round. Harleen Vandal was eliminated in the 5th round, and Samer Zumot was eliminated in the 6th round.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Catherine, go ahead with your new point.
Just that I believe Abby indicated they only wish to run for the 1-year term, right?
That is correct based on the report. And Abby's name was still on the 2-year list. Give me a second. We'll take Vincent and then we'll discuss the other one. Vincent asks for the vote counts per round to be noted in the minutes. I'm sure that there's no problem with that, Abby. Okay, so we will have that email sent along with the vote counts. I presume that you're going to ask that of the future elections too. So I don't think that there's any problem with including those vote counts. Okay, so we'll just do that by default, I think. So Abby, it's true that you only wanted the 1-year position, right?
Yes, that is correct. However, I believe the interpretation that was given was that everybody is eligible for the 2-year, and then we fill the 1-year.
Trying to think about the specifics. I think the specific wording of how that was presented was that everyone who has asked to be voted for 2 years is eligible for 2 years. Noting that directors can, of course, resign after 1 year regardless. Alex, what do you think?
So what I recommended earlier was that all candidates who wanted to be elected for the 2 years would run in the 2-year election first. So this would exclude people who only wanted to run for a 1-year position. And then everyone who wanted to run for a 1-year position, along with the candidates who were not successful in the previous round of voting, would be in the 1-year election. Now, since this election has taken place, I think it's Abby's decision as to whether or not she wishes to redo this and only run in the 1-year spot, or if she finds this acceptable, because ultimately it's her decision whether she runs for a 2-year spot or 1-year spot or both.
So, Abby, if you would like to renounce your spot, then like by default, the second 2-year at-large position would go to the first runner-up, which was Samer Zumot, provided that he had the minimum vote requirement. And then you would still be eligible for the 1-year race. Ben, is that kind of what you were going to say?
I was going to suggest to the assembly that Abby Simpson fill the 1 year and we hold basically a runoff election for the remaining 2-year seat with all of the runners up. But your interpretation works just as well.
Okay. I will allow people a few minutes or a few moments to put 1s or 2s into the chat to indicate if they have a strong preference. But for now, my assumption is that we'll go forward with the simplest procedure dictated solution, which is the one that I presented, where Abby may choose to renounce her seat and then would be eligible to run in the 1-year position, and the 2-year position, the remaining 2-year position would go to the first runner-up, Samer Zumot. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to put the question to Abby right now. Abby, would you like to announce your 2-year spot?
Sure, I'll run for the 1 year.
Okay.
It's easiest.
So then our victors for the 2-year spots are then Elena Guevara and Samar Zumont. And then all of the unsuccessful 2-year candidates will be added to the 1-year candidate pool, or left in the 1-year candidate pool. And we will take 5 minutes to vote for the 1-year candidates. Once we have confirmation that the 1-year candidates voting is up, then we can start. Ben, you have a point?
Yes. To whom shall I forward the email of the results?
Who's
To
taking
Mike
that?
Semeta.
Okay.
Michael Semeta, the, I guess, secretary for the meeting.
Okay. Abby, can you just give me confirmation once we have 1-year voting up?
James has indicated that it is now open.
Okay. Everyone, you have 5 minutes from 2:13, so until 2:18 p.m. to vote in the 1-year at-large candidate election. All right, everyone, there's 1 minute left in voting. Please make sure that if you have not yet voted, that you do submit your votes before 2:18 p.m.
We're currently at 19, Michael, so we might need to give another minute.
Okay. How many total are there?
There are 45 eligible voters.
Okay. Given that we are at 19 out of 45 eligible voters, I'm just going to extend voting for now until 2:20 p.m. Please, if you have not voted, do so now. And for the live minutes, I would suggest that we put withdrawn next to Abby Simpson and put Samra Zumant below Elena Guevara.
That's weird because I have updated it. Okay,
Oh,
there
okay.
we go.
Yeah.
It was just a frozen page.
And yeah. Perfect. Point of personal privilege from Stephanie Yamo. My apologies. I had not realized I had not yet remuted before drinking. All right, everyone. It is 2:20 p.m. Abby, what vote count are we at right now?
I believe the last number I've received is 22. When you'd like to close voting, Michael, that will indicate to James that he will send the results to Ben.
Yeah. I'm going to give it another minute. And if anyone hasn't voted by 2:21, then they've lost their chance.
Michael, I have received results.
Okay.
So the elected candidate for the 1-year at-large director seat is Abigail Simpson. The results of the single transferable vote, STV, is that what that stands for? Actually, Abby was elected in the first round, having met the threshold for election, and no candidates were eliminated. I will forward the results to Michael Semeta, or Chemeta.
Thank you. The results are being forwarded and will be included in the minutes. With that done, we can now move on to the councillor director election. So likewise, once that is open, we will have 5 minutes. I'm going to cut it off at 5 minutes, regardless of how many people have voted, because you all have a pretty good chance to vote. And there are only 2 candidates for 2 positions. So Abby, confirm for me once voting is open, and then we will close it 5 minutes after that.
Waiting for confirmation from James. So whenever James is ready. I've received confirmation that voting has opened.
Okay, voting opened at 2:23 p.m. And it will close at 2:28 p.m. Point of order, Ken Sharma.
Wasn't this voting supposed to be yes or no voting?
It should be yes or no voting, but it should not make a difference as long as each candidate receives the minimum required threshold for voting.
Cool.
I believe it was a ranked ballot, Michael, in the election. You just rank both.
Yeah, it's functionally the same. There is now 1 minute left in voting. Please make sure that if you have not yet submitted your responses, you do so by 2:28 p.m. for them to be counted. All right, voting should now close or have closed. Ben, please let us know once you get the results.
Hi, everybody. So the election of councillor directors saw the elected candidates Marie Jolicoeur-Becotte and Canon Sharma both elected in the first round in a stunning turn of events. And I will forward this to Michael.
All right, thank you, Ben. So we are now going to go back to the motion that is recommended for adoption, and I'm going to fill in the names on consensus. If anybody objects to filling in the names, please raise your hand at some point while I'm reading out the motion with the associated amendments. Be it resolved that the Assembly appoints Elena Guevara, Samer Zamat, and Abby Simpson as at-large directors as elected by the membership, and be it further resolved that the Assembly appoints Councillors Marie Jolicoeur-Becotte and Canon Sharma as directors as elected by members of Students' Council. Canon Sharma, go ahead.
I'd like to move an amendment so that we can specify which of the at-large directors are for 2 years and which are for 1 year in the final motion.
Okay. Is there a seconder for this motion to amend? Seconded by Marie Jolicoeur-Becotte. So the motion as amended would read, be it resolved that the Assembly appoints Elena Guevara and Samer Zamat as to the 2-year positions and Abby Simpson to the 1-year position as at-large directors, something along those lines. Is there any opposition to changing the wording in this way? Okay, seeing none, we're going to just take it on consensus. The minutes will be updated to reflect that Elena Guevara and Samer Zamat are appointed for 2-year positions. Is there any further discussion on the motion as amended? Okay, I'm not seeing any discussion points being raised, so the updated text is on the screen in the live doc, and we're going to move to a vote on this item. So can I get anyone who is opposed to the motion as amended? Anyone abstaining from the motion as amended? Okay, seeing neither opposition nor abstention, the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations to Alana, Samer, Abby, Marie, and Canon. And a big thank you and round of applause. I don't know if you can do applause in this. Out to James, who managed the IT back end of this. Always a good job, and very difficult when we are going back and forth saying, no, we'll extend it a bit. No, let's take it now. So thank you, James.
We love you, James.
Okay. Moving on now to the member submitted proposals. We have dispensed with the mandated business, and we move on to item number 6, UWaterloo Professional Development, PD, submitted by Adrian Fraser. The motion is recommended for rejection by the board of directors and reads, whereas co-op students widely recognize that the required PD courses are terrible, then be it resolved that WUSA believes that the current PD courses are devoid of any redeemable qualities whatsoever, and be it further resolved that as long as PD is required for co-op students and PD is devoid of any value, the official slogan of the Federation shall be fuck PD. Apologies for my language, it's as written. And speaking list now has Vincent followed by Edward followed by Megan. So Vincent, go ahead and speak.
Did you get a second?
Can I get a second for the motion first? Abby. Okay. Abby seconds. Vincent, go ahead and speak. Actually, Adrian's not on the council, is he?
I've given Adrian speaking permission because he's the member who proposed it. So like, did we want Adrian to speak to it first and then take councillors, or?
Yeah, I'll take Adrian
Okay.
as a privileged speaker, but because Adrian's not on the council, he's not a delegate, so I don't think he can move it. So I'm going to take Abby as the mover and Vincent as the seconder.
Take me as a mover for both of them then,
Yeah.
Michael.
Okay, will do. Go ahead, Adrian.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
I think the motion is pretty clear. I think many a Waterloo student has taken the PD courses and been sorely disappointed by their content. And I think by changing the slogan of WUSA, it would really force a conversation about what needs to change. And I think this sort of taking action would really show the students of Waterloo that WUSA is committed to the problems that they're facing. And I think it would just show that WUSA is listening to the student voice at Waterloo. And yeah.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. I'll take Vincent next.
Before we move further into discussion, I'd like to motion to split the question, and so the two be it resolved clauses be voted on separately, because I expect, especially the second one, people will have possibly different feelings towards in the first be it resolved clause.
Okay, so we have a mover to split the question, seconded by Stephanie. So the motion will be the whereas and the first be it resolved, and then another motion will be the second be it further resolved item. Moved by Vincent, seconded by Stephanie. Is there any discussion on splitting the question? Seeing none, I'll just take it to a vote. Can I get all those opposed to splitting the question? Okay, I have one opposition. Can I get anyone abstaining from splitting the question? Okay, so the motion carries with one opposition. Would anyone like their vote noted? Okay, so the motion is now split into whereas and the first be it resolved statement, and the second motion being the be it further resolved that statement. So we will continue discussion dealing with the first motion. which is, be it resolved that WUSA believes that the current PD courses are devoid of any redeemable qualities whatsoever. I will migrate the speaking list, so we'll continue with Edward, and then Megan, and then Stephanie.
Hi. So I want to acknowledge some thoughts from my constituents of engineering. I received an email saying that they felt very strongly in favor of this. I've also received a comment stating that they appreciated the humor behind the motion, but also recognized that it would be unprofessional and overall was not in favor of it as well.
Okay, thank you, Edward. Next up, we have Megan Tam.
Hi, everyone. I would still like to voice my opposition to this motion. I believe that the language of the motion is worded deliberately quite strongly, which I understand is the feeling of some or many students at the University of Waterloo. However, I think it is frankly inaccurate to say that PD courses are devoid of any redeemable qualities whatsoever. I think drawing particular attention to some of the fundamental PD courses, which teach students how to navigate the co-op process, is a key point in stating this argument, knowing that, yes, many students do learn how to navigate the co-op process from discussions with their peers or perhaps with their advisors, but the PD fundamentals courses do serve to set that framework for having a successful time in Waterloo's co-op system. With regard to the electives, I do agree that this is an opinion that some people might have for PD electives, but again, I think that it is erroneous to say that PD courses are devoid of any redeemable qualities whatsoever. I would be highly in favor of undertaking additional advocacy on PD courses. Quite frankly, it's been a few years since I took one myself, and with everything going on with COVID and communications with CEE this year, CEE is Cooperative and Experiential Education, formerly known as CECA. With all of our communications with CEE this year, PD has not been a topic of priority, simply because I personally lack feedback to bring to CEE on this topic. So I'd be happy to entertain a discussion perhaps at our next Students' Council meeting on what advocacy related to PD could look like, but I don't feel that this motion is the correct avenue to undertake.
Thank you, Megan. Next up on the speaking list, I have Stephanie and then Vincent and Kenan. Go ahead, Stephanie.
So my computer just died and I just returned. So can I ask to be added later to the speaking list when I figure out what just happened?
Okay, I will move you to the bottom of the speaking list for now, and we'll see if that's suitable for you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Vincent, and Kenan withdraws his statement. Cool. Go ahead, Vincent.
Hi. So I had quite a few students reach out to me about this, so I have some prepared remarks. When I first saw this motion, I'll admit I thought it was a joke, but as I started talking about it with my constituents, it was quite clear that this is something students by and large want us to do. CEE has and continues to put the interests of students last, whether it's ringing students for more money to fund their bloated bureaucracy, which includes PD, or blaming students who are victims of workplace abuse. Actions speak louder than words, and it is clear from the actions of CEE that they will only act in the interests of students when those happen to coincide with the interests of employers. PD in particular has abysmally low ratings among the students who take the courses. According to PD's own data, the most recent of which they've publicly shared that I could find was from winter 2010 to fall 2012, shows that every term less than half of students said that the course content and activities were able to maintain their interest. The highest number reported was winter 2011, with 47% of students saying their PD course was able to maintain their interest. The lowest number was in winter 2012, with 39% of students saying the same. At the time, this number was trending further downwards. The student who submitted this motion is correct in that the PD program is inherently flawed. I believe that PD cannot be fixed without scrapping the entire thing and starting over. Nevertheless, the reason PD is inherently flawed is because the courses are designed by Waterloo professors. As fantastic as many of our professors are, I cannot think of someone less qualified to write a course giving advice on working in industry than someone who works in academia, and I say this as someone who hopes to work in academia one day. The fact that the course creators are out of touch with what working in industry is like is clear to any student who takes the course. Whether it's dumb advice like putting your student number on your resume or boomer nonsense about how millennials need to be infantilized, these courses are not serving students in any useful way. On the other hand, I think this assembly is well aware of the lackluster image that this organization has to the student body. On this particular motion and the issue of if it's professional, when I discussed this with my constituents, they said that sounded like WUSA making an excuse to put the interests of themselves ahead of the interests of what the students they're supposed to represent actually want. Students are disinterested in WUSA because time after time, WUSA fails to listen to what the majority of students want. Let's start listening to what students want and take a real stance to improve the quality of the education our students receive and pay for. That's all for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. Next up, I have a direct response. Point of information. Are we speaking to the original motion or splitting the motion? We are speaking to the motion as split. So we're handling the first part of the motion first, which is be it resolved that WUSA believes that the current PD courses are devoid of any redeemable qualities whatsoever. So I have direct responses from Edward and Megan and Alana. So we'll take Edward first, then Megan and Alana.
Hi. I'd like to preface this by saying I am not saying this in defense of cooperative education, but I'd like to point out my experiences from having been sat on Co-op Students Council for 2 years and having worked with a number of professionals there on a number of issues. So I'd like to kind of rebut or at least clarify some of the points that Vincent made in their remarks. So one remark was regarding the co-op fee and how it was funding a useless bureaucracy. I like to state that the co-op fee is something that they've been looking at quite in depth over the last few years. They have worked well on creating co-op fee deep dive to see where the money goes. The fees have been going through extensive review processes to make sure the increases are fair. For example, this year, the fee increase was less than inflation. So I believe that we do have an advantage with working with cooperative education to advance students' needs, and it has worked in the past. And I don't see the point in being antagonistic for the sake of it. Second, I'd like to also point out that, yes, there have been issues regarding workplace harassment and students, and the university reacted to that. However, I also like to state that I have talked to people and they have been very receptive within co-op and have been cooperative in trying to resolve these issues, figuring out the root causes, and have been very willing to work with us when we are willing to work with them. And I guess on that note, I think adopting a slogan like this, it's analogous to imagine if one of our societies adopted a slogan called "Fuck WUSA." I think there's an issue there where it becomes very difficult to cooperate with another group of people who have that strongly entrenched within their organization that they hate you and they don't really care much for what you have to say, and that places us at a disadvantage and hurts students overall, rather than us actually working with a group that has expressed interest in hearing from students and from implementing suggestions from students, such as adding more not interested rankings to Waterloo Works and adding improvements to PD courses by consulting students. I think there is work to be done, but I don't believe that this is the right course of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Before I take the point of order from Vincent, I'm going to just clarify that we are only discussing the first resolution. So please do not include commentary on the second resolution being especially relating to the official slogan of the Federation and PD. Okay, thank you, Vincent. Next we move on to Megan, followed by Elena.
Thank you, Speaker. I would just like to draw attention to one of the final remarks that the counselor from the mathematics faculty mentioned, which is the importance of taking, and pardon me for paraphrasing, a real stance to address the concerns that students have about PD. I certainly agree with the counselor from engineering's notes about Co-op Students Council. In fact, Co-op Students Council has recently been renamed to CEE Council, so Cooperative and Experiential Education Council, in order to fully capture that students also need to provide feedback on things which don't fall under the mandate of co-op, including all portions of experiential education at the University of Waterloo. And part of the reason that WUSA is able to advocate effectively is because we are able to communicate professionally and consistently with whomever we're speaking with. So whether that is administrators at the university or members of parliament in government, our thoughts and concerns and recommendations are heard because we're bringing them forward in a professional manner, as well as a manner which allows folks to understand where we're coming from and how we can move forward together. I think that the wording of this motion is deliberately quite aggressive, and it's possible that it could be amended within the spirit of the motion, but it would still be my preference to vote this motion down and entertain a more holistic discussion at Students' Council about students' concerns about PD, so that we can bring forward concrete recommendations to the university to make our advocacy on this topic as effective as it can be. So to circle back to my allusion to the counselor from mathematics faculty's point, in order to have a real in order to do a really good job of advocating with regard to WAP PD and to take a real stance, I would argue that by definition means that the stance must be professional, it must be evidence-based, and it should not make frankly derogatory remarks such as proclaiming that something which there are people in the university who work very hard on and feel very strongly about, such as PD, is devoid of any redeemable qualities whatsoever.
Thank you, Megan. We have Alana for direct response, at which point we will have exhausted the current direct responses and we'll move back to the original speaking order with Steph, followed by John. Go ahead, Alana.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with what Megan and Edward have said. I guess my response is more to the statement that was read out loud. And I have 2 points to make. Firstly is that we have a system with which WUSA takes on advocacy stances, and that is through Students' Council. And in my experience, there are very few things that come to Students' Council that we do not try to take on and listen to the students. There's very little we can do if the situation is not presented to us. And to add on to that, we do not have an infinite amount of capacity. We already take on more than what our capacity allows, and we do our best. So I think it's an unfair statement to say that WUSA does not listen to students. We have a means of hearing students' issues and taking them on, and we do what we can with what we have.
Okay, thank you, Elena. Vincent has been added to the speaking order, and then next up we have Stephanie. Are you ready, Steph?
Yeah, I figured out what's going on now.
Cool.
Okay. So I definitely appreciate the energy behind this motion. That said, I do agree with Megan and Edward and many others with regards to my concern about how this is currently phrased. I do believe, as the incoming VP Education, that with a stance written like this, it'd be very difficult to develop positive working relations with CCE. I do think that there's reasonable. I think that they're willing to listen to us, but when we're very antagonistic and condescending about it, that's not really the way in order to to build a good working relationship. In addition to that, I think there needs to be, I guess, more evidence, but also just, I mean, like, what does it mean to just say that they're devoid of any redeemable qualities? Like, we're not providing any feedback or advice. It's literally just complaining. And generally, when I see our policies or advocacy stances, they're giving evidence-based, tangible solutions that the university can then implement. We aren't just an organization that just complains and whines about things. Like, we'll work with entities in order to bring about potential solutions. And I think that's really important, and that it's given us a lot of success. So I think it would be setting a poor precedent to move forward with this as written. I will suggest that assuming that this motion is voted down and that the one following is also voted down, that we do something where we task the VP Education along with the probably the Vice Speaker to provide council with a summary of what existing policy WUSA has regarding the PD program, and basically just a draft suggestion of what I just outlined earlier. But I am not proposing that at this very moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I have first a direct response from John Hunt, and then John, you were next in the speaking order for a new point. Do you still want to leave that one there?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, yeah.
Did you say, sorry, was it, Mr. Chairman, was it suggested that the deputy speaker would have an actionable item from this? I'm a little confused at that statement.
Steph, could you clarify?
I was saying that was a possibility, but I'm currently workshopping it, so I'm not proposing that currently to the Assembly.
John, does that answer your direct response?
Yes, it does. Can I take my main point now?
Go ahead.
All right. So even though I left co-op partially because I believe this motion to be correct to an extent, I don't know that it would necessarily be appropriate for us to adopt, but I'll leave that for voting to decide.
Thank you, John. Next up in the speaking order, we have Vincent.
Hi, so I'd like to address a few of the concerns. First is about taking a holistic approach to reforming PD. Students don't want minor reforms to PD. They don't want a holistic approach. They want the entire thing to be scrapped because virtually all PD courses provide next to no value for students. I'll give the possible exception of the maybe PD1, which might be a good idea, but is poorly designed, and the work term reports, which I think are a government requirement for co-op programs. But while I think it might be possible to envision a useful form of professional development courses, I can't see that happening if the reformed PD courses are remotely based on the current set of PD courses, which is what this motion addresses. And as for recommendations, I think it takes time to come up with those recommendations, but I think we should clearly communicate that we're not okay with the status quo and are going to start seriously looking into how to fix this. As for the issues of capacity, I'll take on advocacy on this issue myself, regardless of whether or not this assembly decides to pass the motion today.
Okay, thank you. Direct response to Cannon, and then Edward, you're being added to the speaking order.
Hi. There have been multiple times, and even in the motion itself, it says that all PD courses are devoid of any value. And I know Megan has spoken about it, saying that is not true, and I totally agree with that. I had people reach out to me saying that while quite a lot of the PD courses are not as useful, there are some which they have actually used in their jobs, such as PD7, conflict resolution, or PD8, intercultural skills.
like these are courses which I personally have also used in my job when I'm working with international clients. So I disagree with the basic stance of this motion, whereas I do agree that there need to be substantial changes to PD, but there is still some value in some of those courses.
Thank you. John, I'm adding you to the bottom of the speakers list. Vincent has sponsored Yang to speak in front of the assembly. Abby seconds. Is there anyone who is opposed to this motion? Okay, seeing none, we will give permission to speak to Yang Zhang. And I'm adding Catherine to the speakers list as well. Go ahead, Yang.
Okay, so I just have a small question. So while we were discussing this topic, I've heard like lots of people say that WUSA has like a very friendly working relationship with CEE, and they say that with this relationship they can enact change more effectively. And so as a student, I just like to know what sort of changes have you made to PD precisely as a result of this relationship?
Referring back to what Megan, the current VP Academic, said earlier, that PD hasn't been a focus this year. With regards to speaking to previous years, we might have to ask Matthew Garretts, who is also here. Matt, is your point a 1 or 2? Yeah, I will go ahead and ask for Matt to speak in response to Yang's question.
Hi, can everyone hear me all right?
Yep.
This is an excellent question. I think it was Yang who asked it. And I say it's excellent because this is just basically overlaps with my original point anyway. In terms of changes that have been made in the past, WAPD has an ongoing review process. So courses are constantly being rewritten. While I can't really speak to specific changes that have been made within WAPD, WUSA has been effective in advocacy to other pieces of the cooperative and experiential affairs or experiential education portfolio in the past, the co-op fee review and some of the changes around quality of life that came about from that being an example. One thing that I would share that I think the assembly would benefit from, and I think does go to your point, Yang, is that there are kind of open channels for concerns to be addressed and talked about. The MathSoc VPA, as well as WUSA's Vice President Education, both sit on the Cooperative Education Council, which is a university committee that WAPD reports to. So if there were clearly articulated concerns, that is the place where WUSA, by its good relationship with the university, has been included, and where I think the university would welcome the opportunity to address concerns that are articulated. I hope that answers your question. I know it's not as direct as it could be, but that's what I have. Thank you.
I'll sponsor the member.
Okay. Sorry, Megan sponsors, seconded by Cannon, and I'm going to assume there's no opposition to that. So go ahead and speak, Yang.
Okay, thank you. That was very informative. And so I guess what I would like to say about that is, if PD courses are being constantly rewritten, as you say, I don't doubt that, but I think that since no one really notices that, or since the public opinion towards PD has stayed about the same, I'd imagine that there's something that is not working in this incremental review process. As regards to your statement about the feedback from students, I do understand that that is a valid, like, helpful point for WUSA to be connected with CE in this way. That's all.
Okay, thank you. The speaking list as it stands right now is Edward, followed by John, followed by Catherine, followed by Matthew requiring sponsorship and having gained it, looks like, and then Vincent. So we'll take Edward first. Go ahead.
Hi. So I'd like to recognize comments we've said earlier, and I want to suggest an amendment to this first part of the motion. So the amendment that I'm suggesting is that be it resolved that WUSA believes the current PD courses require changes to improve the quality and relevancy of content, and be it further resolved that a representative from WAPD, now known as WIL programs, be invited to the next meeting of Students' Council to hear students' concerns with PD courses.
Can you send the text of that to? Perfect.
Can you either? Yeah, thanks, Edward.
Okay, so the amendment has been proposed by Edward Yang and seconded by John Hunt.
I guess to be clear, I'm also striking the first be it resolved.
Yeah, replacing the be it resolved with the proposed text. Do you also want to change the whereas statement or no?
No.
Okay. So moved by Edward, seconded by John. Is there any discussion on the amendment? We are taking a break from our current speaking list. Edward has a right to speak to it first, followed by John.
Yeah, so I believe that this amendment recognizes the spirit of the improvements required in PD courses, but is more specific in its concerns and also has a path forward where we can bring these concerns up directly and start this advocacy and continue it.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll take Vincent, Steph, and then John.
Thank you for the engineering counselor's proposed amendment. I was going to make an amendment as well, and I would just ask if they would consider this friendly to their amendment, which would be rather than striking the be it resolved, that first be it resolved, to replace it with the following text I'm sending in chat, because I think some people were concerned about, the accuracy or, absoluteness of the current wording, and this might make it a bit more accurate and amendable to the assembly.
Okay, so for friendly amendments, all that is required is that one person opposes to an amendment, and then it is no longer friendly, and we must take it in turn. So the proposed amendment is, instead of striking be it resolved that WUSA believes that the current PD courses are devoid of any redeemable qualities whatsoever, it be replaced with be it resolved that WUSA believes the majority of the current set of PD courses are providing little value to students. Is there anyone who opposes making that amendment?
Respectfully, hang on.
Okay, it's not friendly. So this is the second level of amendment, is the deepest we can go, but we are now going to require a seconder on Vincent's motion to amend the amendment to the main motion. Would anyone like to second? Okay. Nick's a counselor, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Nick is seconding, and that now we will have a new speaking order for this. So just making note of all this, which will begin with Vincent and Nick. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Megan? Okay, go ahead, Vincent.
Yeah, so I appreciate the matter, some people brought up that a few of the PD courses are useful. I think there's mostly just a handful of them that students thought were okay and were valuable, and I think it would be accurate to say most of the PD courses don't provide a lot of value, so they provide little value. So I think this is in spirit of the original motion submitted by a student, except maybe a bit more accurate and less inflammatory.
Thank you, Vincent. Nick, would you like to speak to the amendment at all? Okay, so then we will move on to Megan, followed by John.
Thank you. Right, so what I was trying to say when I had technical difficulties earlier was respectfully, the motion was not friendly to me. I kind of am not thrilled to make this point, but the reason that the motion is not friendly to me is because as an elected representative, I don't feel that I have an appropriate set of data to either confirm or deny that the current set of PD courses provide little to no value to students. So I would hesitate to pass a resolution stating that this is the belief of WUSA. I'm certainly well aware of concerns which students frequently raise on social media about PD courses, but I think it is very important to note that not all students participate in various social media platforms, and not all students choose to participate in a way that conveys their concerns about academic courses, co-op, and the like. So while I certainly appreciate the counselor's amendment, and I think that this could well be something that is included in a policy that Students' Council passes in the future, at this point in time, I would not be comfortable passing this amendment to the amendment today, and I would intend to vote against at this point.
Okay, thank you. Next up on the speaking list, we have John, followed by Catherine. Go ahead, John.
I call the question.
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't hear John call the question. So John has called the question, and Catherine is seconding it. So we are now going to proceed to a vote on whether to call the question or vote immediately on this amendment to the amendment. So to be clear, we're not voting on the amendment to the amendment. We're voting on whether to vote on the amendment to the amendment. Can I get anyone who is opposed to calling the question immediately? Any abstentions? Okay, seeing none, the motion to call the question on the amendment to the amendment passes unanimously, and we are now voting on the amendment to the amendment. To be clear, the amendment to the amendment is replacing the original "be it resolved" text in the amendment instead of striking it with "be it resolved that WUSA believes the majority of the current set of PD courses are providing little value to students." Can I get all those who are opposed to the amendment? Please raise your hands. The amendment to the amendment, that is. I will get to noting and those in favor in time, but for now we are only taking those opposed. Please raise your hands in the team chat. Okay, we have 10 in opposition. Can I get everyone to lower their hands? And now we will take all those abstaining from the amendment to the amendment. Okay, for abstaining from the amendment to the amendment, please lower your hands. And now we will take everyone in favor of the amendment to the amendment. Okay. Okay, thank you, John. Point of order to Chen. What's your point of order?
Hi, I'd just like to ask about the format of the voting. I've noticed that in previous motions, we've assumed that anyone who doesn't raise their hand is voting in favor. But specifically for this motion, we've asked people who are voting in favor to raise their hands. I understand that this motion is rather different from the other motions, but could I ask for an explanation on why this motion has been singled out for a change in voting standards? Thank you.
Okay, John, I'm allowing this because I think it's pertinent to the vote. And we had 2 in favor, by the way, that I saw. So Chen, the reason for this is the way that I run meetings, I always ask for any opposition first, and then we move to abstention. And if nobody has, or not many people have raised their hand in abstention or opposition, then the vote is certain. But here we had 10 people raise their hand in opposition, so I figured it would be prudent to also check those who are in favor to make sure that of all those who are actively participating in the meeting, there is a majority of those voting in favor of the motion or in opposition to the motion. So that said, the motion fails with a vote of 2 in favor, 4, I think 3 opposed, counting John's internet troubles, and 3 abstaining, sorry, and 10 in opposition. Would anyone like their vote noted? I think Vincent wanted his noted in favor. Would anyone else like their votes noted? Okay, Nick, which way did you vote for the minutes? Okay, Nick noted in abstention and Ayman noted in opposition. Okay, we have dispensed with the amendment to the amendment, and we now move back to the amendment to the main motion.
Thank you, Michael.
The amendment to the motion next on the speaking list was Stephanie.
Hi, I hate to do this to you, Michael, but I'm going to propose an amendment to the amendment that I think is kind of a compromise between what Vincent was getting at, as well as what the original proposer of this motion had in mind. So it will read as follows. It will strike the existing whereas statements and replace them with, whereas WUSA believes in the provision of a quality, affordable education that leaves students well prepared for the workforce. Whereas there is widespread dissatisfaction among students regarding the quality and value of current PD courses. Whereas an ineffective PD program is not conducive to the school's mission and ability to prepare students for co-op placements and later employment. And that is all.
Okay, so.
And thank you, Catherine, for writing that.
So the motion that you're making is to strike the whereas statement in the motion and replace it with the three whereas presented?
Yes.
Okay. And that motion is seconded by Catherine. So we will take a new speaking order for this second amendment to the amendment. Steph, you have the right to speak to it as the mover. And Catherine and others, please indicate in the chat if you would like to be added to the speaking list.
Yeah, so I think this kind of goes in line with I guess why WUSA is speaking to this. It also like adds acknowledgement to the many students who have spoken out regarding their dissatisfaction with PD and how it currently exists, and the reason why we're advocating for it. There's also, I guess, by saying widespread, it provides, I guess, some lenience and addresses the earlier concern by the VP Education that there wasn't enough evidence for her to confidently I guess, say that like all students are dissatisfied with the program as it currently is. I think it's fair to say that there is widespread dissatisfaction, at least within the context of social media and some of the students we've spoken to, but the dissatisfaction can vary quite a bit. So yeah, I think that this is a fair kind of compromise.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Noting that Catherine has not added herself to the speaking list, we're going to take John next. So go ahead, John.
I call the question.
Okay, can I get a seconder for calling the question on the amendment to the amendment? Ken and Sharma seconds. We move immediately to voting. Can I get all those opposed to calling the question on the amendment to the amendment? Any abstentions? All right, and the motion carries unanimously. We are now immediately into voting on the amendment to the amendment. Can I get all those opposed to the amendment to the amendment? Anyone abstaining from the amendment to the amendment? Okay, there are 2 abstentions on the amendment to the amendment. Please lower your hands. Can I get everyone who is in favor of the amendment to the amendment to please raise your hand? Okay, thank you. So the motion carries unanimously with 2 abstentions, and Vincent and Stephanie noted in favor. Would anyone else like their votes noted? All right, seeing none, we will move back to the amendment to the main motion as amended, which now reads with 3 whereas clauses as sent in the chat, followed by the 2 be it resolved statements sent in the chat earlier. And we will now pick up right back with the speaking order. We had John followed by Catherine.
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Hi, Michael.
Yep.
I call the question.
All right. So John Hunt calls the question. Can I get a seconder? Catherine seconds, calling the question on the amendment to the main motion as amended. Is there anyone who is opposed to calling the question to the amendment to the main motion as amended? I think these people still have their hands raised from earlier. Catherine, Megan, and Vincent. That's right. Okay. Is there any abstention to calling the question on the amendment to the main motion as amended? Seeing none, the motion to call the question carries unanimously, and we now move immediately to voting on the amendment to the main motion as amended. So can I get all those opposed to the amendment to the main motion as amended? Any abstentions? All right. Seeing neither abstentions nor opposition, the motion carries unanimously. So we are now back on the main motion as amended, which is the 3 whereas statements and 2 be it resolved statements. I will later, before we vote on this, read them out in full again, just so that everyone's clear on what we're voting on. But we go back to the main speaking list, which had John and then Catherine and then potentially
Don't worry
others.
about that, Michael. Hey,
all right, John,
I
go
called
ahead.
the question.
Okay. So John once again calls the question, seconded by Kanan Sharma. All right. Can I get anyone who's opposed to calling the question on the main motion as amended? Sorry, Catherine, you were too slow. We have one in opposition to calling the question on the main motion as amended. Can you lower your hand and I'll call for abstentions? Any abstentions on the main motion or calling the question on the main motion as amended? Okay. The motion carries with one opposition. Would anyone like their votes noted? Okay, seeing none. Okay. Stephanie Yimo noted in opposition of calling the question on the main motion as amended, and Vincent Macri noted in favor on calling the question of the main motion as amended. Oh, not noted. Okay. Vincent not noted, just Stephanie. And now we go immediately into voting on the main motion as amended. The main motion, which reads, or as amended, which reads, whereas WUSA believes in the provision of a quality, affordable education leaves students well prepared for the workforce, whereas there is widespread dissatisfaction among students regarding the quality and value of the current PD courses, and whereas an ineffective PD program is not conducive to the school's mission and ability to prepare students for co-op placements and later employment, be it resolved that WUSA believes the current PD courses require changes to improve the quality and relevancy of content. And be it further resolved that a representative from Work Integrated Learning Programs, WAPD, be invited to the next meeting of Students' Council to hear student concerns with PD courses. Point of information, Stephanie Yimo.
Sorry, can I add a note to my noted in opposition?
Yes.
Okay, can I add that it reads as a bit obstructionist to me to be calling the question so many times in a row.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
The reason for your opposition is noted. And so we're voting on the motion that I just read out, the main motion as amended. Can I get all those who are opposed to the main motion as amended? Can I now get all those who are abstaining from the main motion as amended? Okay, one abstention, and then, oh, Yeah, one abstention. And the main motion as amended carries unanimously with one abstention. And we can now move on to the second motion. Yes, if it's unanimous, I guess there was one abstention. So Vincent Macri noted in favor of the main motion as amended. Now we move on to the second motion as previously spit out. Be it further resolved that as long as PD is required for co-op students and PD is devoid of any value, the official slogan of the Federation shall be "Fuck PD." Vincent and then John. And John would like to be noted in favor of the previous vote as well. So Vincent, go ahead, and then John.
Actually, I have a point of information first.
Go ahead.
When should I object to the consideration?
Do it right now.
I object to the consideration.
Okay. John objects to the consideration of the motion. Would you like to provide rationale?
It is stated that objection to this consideration of a motion should occur when a member feels that an original main motion should not be considered because it is often embarrassing, or I wish that it not be debated in the assembly, and that is my desire.
Okay. John wishes for the motion not to be debated by the assembly. Cannon, I'm assuming that you're seconding John's objection to the consideration. You can note your objection to the objection when we take it to a vote. Just got to refresh myself, John. Is the objection to the consideration of a question a debatable motion?
That's a good question. Let me check. It is not debatable.
Okay. So we're going to move directly to a vote. We are voting on whether to object to the consideration of the motion. Be it further resolved that as long as PD is required for co-op students and PD is devoid of any value, the official slogan of the Federation shall be "Fuck PD." Edward, what's your point of information?
Hi, what's the voting threshold for this?
Objecting to the consideration is 2/3 against consideration required. And we have somebody moving a motion to overrule the speaker, which is, I believe, of a higher priority than objecting to the consideration. So is there anyone who would like to second the motion to overrule the speaker? Okay. Nobody has indicated in the chat that they wish to second the motion to overrule the speaker. Point of order, Stephanie Emo.
Hi, can we just get you to double check that what Vincent said takes precedence in Robert's Rules of Order?
Yeah. I'm going to need my copy of Robert's Rules. Just a second. There has been a request for a quorum check. Could I get the secretary to read out the list of those assumed to be in attendance at this meeting currently and confirm that they are actually in attendance? Vincent, you can't object to everything that we do. The quorum check is actually, I think, superseding everything.
Do you object to the quorum check?
No, you cannot object to the quorum check. It supersedes everything.
Sounds good. Okay.
Mike, before you begin, Michael, in the chat, there's a question about motioning to overrule the chair.
Yeah, I'm still looking up that, so we'll take another minute for me to find where that is.
Michael, could you assume a privilege motion to allow a 5-minute break?
Yes, we will take a 5-minute break right after I take Cannon's point of order. What's your point of order, Cannon?
From what I remember about Robert's rules, once a quorum check is called, nothing else can happen, not even a motion to overrule the chair.
This is correct.
Check has been done.
Yeah, this is correct. The quorum check supersedes literally everything, because if you don't have quorum, you cannot proceed with any business whatsoever. So we'll take Mike reading out the names and checking that people are here, and then a 5-minute recess if we're still able to hold session while I figure out the previous niche situation.
Okay, let's do this way. I have the list of all of the voting councilors. As I read your name, put your hand up. I'm going to give everybody like 3 seconds to, if I see their hand, and then put your hand down, and then I'll read the next person. That is the way that I'm going to do this, because I feel like that's the most structured way. All right, Abby Simpson is here. Do you have your hand? Good.
Mike, that might not work because we're recessed for 5 minutes and people might have gotten up to go to the bathroom. So it might only work if you go through the list of attendees.
We are not recessed until after the quorum check.
Yeah, I clarified that, don't worry.
All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
Couldn't you ask?
Abby is here. Alana. Waiting for a hand up from Alana. Good. Nada. I don't see a hand from Nada.
Mike,
Megan Town.
Mike, Stephanie has raised in the chat that a possible way to do this a little quicker could be if you want to put a, what do you call it? Either have everyone who is a counselor and present raise their hand all at once, so then you can just cross-reference the list, or put
we can do that.
Put a small like text in the chat and have those counselors in attendance thumbs up. I'd prefer the first, which is the raise your hand if you're here.
Sure. Okay. Everybody who is a counselor that is here, raise your hand now, and I will check through the list. And that will be easy because we'll have a whole number to make sure that people are here. So we have 24 hands up and Misty 2, so we have definitely met quorum.
Thank you for confirming that, Mike. We're going to recess until 3:40 p.m. while I continue to confirm the precedence of objecting to the consideration versus overruling the speaker.
Councilors and gallery members, please feel free to use the bathroom and grab some refreshments until 3:41 to give Michael a couple more minutes.
Matt, you can't give a point of order while we're recessed.
Thank you, Steph.
While we're recessed, Michael, can I say that I've sent you an image of Robert's rules that might help?
I'm bringing it up right now.
Michael, have we begun voting by the time, like voting on the objection by the time the point of order had been raised, or the objection,
the motion to overrule?
The overrule?
So the way that I'm interpreting all of the available resources that I have read, especially helpful was Edward's image, is that while a motion to overrule the chair would take precedence over objection to the consideration of the question, objection to the consideration of a question is not a debatable motion. So Vincent's motion to overrule the speaker was actually out of order, which means I'm unable to
during voting.
Because which means that I'm unable to take it until after the objection to the consideration of the question has occurred. At which point Vincent can motion to overrule my vote or my interpretation, my ruling, and the objection to the consideration, which would mean that he would require a 2/3 majority vote in favor of overruling me in order to then consider the consider the motion again. However, noting that objection to the consideration of a question requires a 2/3 vote against consideration to sustain the objection, it is unlikely that if Vincent followed through on attempting to overrule the speaker, that he would be able to go back to the main motion that is being objected to.
Exactly. Good thinking.
Michael, while we're still recessed for about like maybe 30 more seconds, is there any possible way you could put that in like first meeting counselor terms for those who on the call are not super familiar with Robert's rules, and for those in the gallery to kind of understand how we are moving forward?
Yeah, so basically what's happening is that immediately on having the motion presented of the be it further resolved that as long as PD, etc. John, before any discussion happened, objected to its consideration and asked that it not be spoken of, or that it not be spoken to on the floor. That is something that he can only do at the beginning before any discussion has happened on the motion. And it requires everyone to vote 2/3 in majority to not discuss it, which is essentially the threshold that you're required to undo a previous decision, which is when we voted to approve the agenda, we approved this item as well to be part of our discussion. So that's why it requires a 2/3 majority threshold. The objection to the consideration of a question is something that is not allowed to be debated on, which means that no discussion points are in order for that motion. It requires a straight vote, and that means that when Vincent wanted to overrule the speaker to actually consider the motion instead, he could not do that during what is essentially a vote, and he needs to wait until after the vote has occurred to object to the consideration of the motion to then overrule that. And if the vote fails on objection to the consideration of the motion, he will not need to make that overruling motion because essentially we will just be considering the motion as we would have anyways before the objection. You think that was helpful, clear enough? Okay, thank you. If anyone is unclear, I will be doing a small write-up of that explanation to send to the minutes to like elucidate what just happened and why it happened the way it did. Thank you all for bringing me back and presenting me with such niche applications of Robert's rules. Abby, did you want to speak?
The secretary has stepped away for a minute. Is there a possibility we can just extend the break by 2 more minutes?
Yep.
Thank you.
Understandable. He had to be here to help litigate whatever this was. Quorum is a majority, 50% plus 1 of the total voting number of council, which I think is something like 33. 33 is like the total number, which would mean quorum is like usually around 17, 18. All right, our secretary is back, and we have a point of information.
So, for greatest clarity, if we want to consider the motion, do we vote in favor or against?
If you want to consider the motion, mute.
In favor of objection.
Yeah, you vote in favor of objection. So we need a 2/3 vote of those in favor of objection, not to consider the motion. Okay. So now that we're clear on how we're voting and what voting means.
Can you say that again?
Okay. If you want to consider the motion, you vote against objection to the consideration. And if you don't want to consider the motion, you vote in favor of objection to the consideration. So we're going to go straight into voting now that we've cleared that up. And can I get all those opposed to objection to the consideration of the motion? Vincent, if you want to consider the motion, you raise your hand now. Okay. We have some confusion. So raise your hand now if you would like to consider the fuck PD motion, as Vincent put it. So make sure your hand is raised. Catherine, what's your point of information? This motion hasn't been amended, it's been split. So we are considering the objection to the consideration of, be it further resolved that as long as PD is required for co-op students and PD is devoid of any value, the official slogan of the Federation shall be fuck PD. I have 6, I saw at most 6 noted in opposition to the motion, the objection to the consideration of the question. Can you please lower your hands and we'll take those in abstention? Okay, so far 1 abstention. Okay, can I get all those, lower your hand please, Angela? Oh, So Catherine, you wanted to be noted in abstention as well, or you want to be abstaining as well? I'll do it again. All those abstaining? Okay. So just the one abstention. And now, can I get people to raise their hands, all those who are in favor of objecting to the consideration of the question, which means that you do not want to talk about the fuck PD motion. All right. Okay. So the final vote, I'm actually gonna go backwards again because somebody noted that they might have voted in opposition accidentally. So we have 17 in favor, 1 abstention, and can I get everyone to lower their hands? Cannon and Vicky. Okay, can I get everyone to raise their hand who is in opposition to the objection to the consideration of the motion, which means that you do want to talk about the fuck PD motion. It means against the motion on the floor. Sorry, guys. Sorry that this is so confusing, guys. So the final tally that I have is 17 in favor, 1 in abstention, and 1 in opposition, which means that 17 people don't want to talk about the motion. 1 person is, I'll use the word ambivalent, even though it might not be correct. And 1 person is in opposition, which means that they do want to talk about the fuck PD motion. If there's anyone who did want to talk about the fuck PD motion and isn't Vincent, then your vote has not been counted in opposition. Just noting that because I saw that there, like when we did opposition previously, there were 6 people. Angela, is that from opposition or from in favor? Okay. So once more, can we get everyone who is opposed to the motion? The objection to the consideration of the motion, rather. Okay. So we had 1 person change from opposition to abstention, and Edward voted in opposition.
The vote count should be reflected on the screen, Michael.
Yeah,
from
17, 2 and 2. Okay. Regardless, with 17 in favor of objecting to the consideration of the motion, that passes the 2/3 threshold of our quorum, and or of those who vote in favor or in opposition, and we are going to move on, striking that motion from our consideration. Thank you for being with me through that one. I understand that it was a little tough. All right, so we have next up the Student Services and Anti-Asian Racism discussion, presented with no opinion by the Board of Directors. This was presented by at-large student Jay Lan. Is Jay here with us today? There's no second needed, Vicky. But if you wish to speak, then you can put a 1 in the chat. Okay, Abby, do we have the student who brought this motion forward?
I don't believe I see them in the chat. John, can you confirm that for me?
I don't see them either.
Okay. So if they show up at any point, I will give them a privileged speaking turn. Okay. So on the speakers list, I have Ina and then Cannon. So I presume that because Ina responded there, that means that Ina is speaking for the student. Cannon, point of information?
Is it possible for me to also give my time to Ina so she has an
8 minutes?
uninterrupted 8 minutes?
Yeah, you can definitely yield your time to Ina for Ina to have an uninterrupted 8 minutes.
Can I just do that right now?
Yeah. Okay. Ina, you will have 12 minutes in addition to you'll have 8 minutes in addition to your usual 4 minutes. I'll just take that now to make things a little bit easier so we don't have to leave you and come back to you. If anyone else wants to yield their time while Ina is speaking as she approaches that 12-minute mark, just note it in the chat and we'll handle that then. 8 minutes granted by the assembly, 12 minutes total for the minutes. So Ina, go ahead.
Thank you, Michael. And just a logistic matter, like I'm looking away from the camera because that's where the meeting screen is. So I'll be reading, when I'm reading the script, I'll be looking at the camera. And additionally, I am not necessarily speaking on Jay's behalf. I am speaking on my personal opinions and thoughts. And another thing, Mike, the secretary, Mike, could you mind sharing the link I sent you through email to council, or I can do so myself, just so students can read the same speech I am planning to present. And sorry, please give me a minute. Let me just send you.
Okay.
It's in the chat. Sorry, give me.
Mike, as the secretary, are you able to share the link to the Google Doc that was shared by the member in the chat?
Oh, like yeah, you can click on this. I shared it on the chat for councilors and attendees to read through. Thank you. Sorry, and I'm not good at public speaking, just so like I apologize if I stutter. But good morning, afternoon, and evening, councilors and attendees of the assembly. My name is Yuqian Wang. I'm a Mandarin Chinese international student in the math teaching program. However, I am commonly known by my friends and colleagues as Ina. This is a name I chose for myself at the age of 6 before I began school because no one could and would be bothered to learn pronouncing Yuqian correctly. Selecting an English or Western name is a common practice done by many Asian and other marginalized folks because our native tongue is too complex and difficult for an European language speaker. A double standard forced onto us while we are expected to pronounce names such as Chernobyl and Hippocrates. However, I am not here to talk more about that. As many of you are aware, on March 16th, an anti-Asian hate crime occurred in Atlanta, Georgia. 8 people lost their lives to the shooting. 6 of them were Asian women. In the days following, there was an influx of anti-Asian racism awareness on social media. Most of these stories and posts were posted by users of Asian descent. Where were our non-Asian allies? Are our lives not important? It's been more than a week. Most of the non-Asian users' anti-Asian racism awareness stories are disappearing. It was as if our community's pain and struggles is only a no longer popular trend and hashtag. However, I'm not here to talk more about that. I'll bring the topic closer to home. According to the latest report by the Chinese Canadian National Council Toronto chapter,
that's a mouthful, there has been more than 1,000 incidents of anti-Asian racist hate crimes reported in Canada since the onset of COVID-19 in North America. That means per capita, more incidents of anti-Asian racism have been reported in Canada than in the United States. 40% of those cases, which is approximately more than 400 cases, occurred in Ontario. Of all victims, children below the age of 18 and seniors above the age of 55 were more likely to be physically assaulted. Why? What have they done to deserve this? Excuse me. However, COVID-19 was not the beginning of the anti-Asian hate crime in Canada. Canada's anti-Asian racism can be traced back as early as the 1800s with the Chinese head tax. However, I'm not here to talk more about that. With all this data and history, a question popped into my head. Why don't we know more about Asian racism? Why is there no awareness about it? The WUSA Student Service, Racial Advocacy for Inclusion, Solidarity, and Equity, or commonly known as RACE, is the student group meant to support Asian students among other marginalized and racialized student communities. However, since the first Instagram post on January 29th of 2019, only approximately 5 to 10 of the 78 posts included advocacy for Asian students. Only one post is a direct advocacy for the Asian community. However, I'm not here to talk more about that. It is a fact that not all Asians are the same. Nevertheless, the same can be applied for Asian Canadian students and Asian international students. We face a different type of racism compared to our domestic peers, just like the Asian community faces a different type of racism from the Black community. As a Chinese international student, I have seen my peers mocked back. I've seen my peers being mocked back in the beginning of winter 2022 for overreacting with masks and teased for bringing the virus to Canada. Colleagues have ignored me when I, as the then master president, was advocating on my international constituents' behalf for their choice to wear masks, just because it's yet to be scientifically proven effective. Friends have mocked me for wearing masks in social gatherings, just because I care the well-being of myself and others. Just because international students tend to wear bougie clothes, it doesn't mean we deserve this microaggressive treatment. Just so you know, we can't go home as easily as you want us to. However, I'm not here to talk more about that. There's definitely more I would like to discuss. The fetishizing of Asian women, the content xenophobia and China bashing, the microaggression Asian face, the model minority myth, etc. However, I know there's no time for these subjects today. All these I've mentioned is not to increase hate towards either WUSA or its services. I have no intention to undermine the services and benefits RACE have executed for the Black and Indigenous communities. Their work is important and necessary. We need student services like this to support the disadvantaged communities in our society. Sorry, there's a few typos in my speech. However, I believe they can do better. There is always room for improvements, and I am here to talk about this. I believe it is our responsibility as the constituents to be critical and hold them responsible. The Asian community is a marginalized group. The Asian international community is a marginalized group. We are constituents of race. We are constituents of WUSA. We are not invisible. Asian people are not the virus, just as Black people are not threats. Indigenous people are not savages. This is not a competition for the saddest oppression story. Only by being together with solidarity can we defeat racist beliefs. There's a saying in Mandarin Chinese, 独木不成林, 逐渐不成音. The direct translation is, a single tree does not make up a forest. A single string cannot create music. In other words, we need to be working together to see an effect. I believe we can if we take the time to listen, understand, and show compassion to each other. Lastly, I know change will not happen immediately. I may not see these changes before I graduate in August. However, I hope my words can make a difference for the younger students and the students who have yet to attend the University of Waterloo. Thank you for taking the time to talk about this important matter. 感谢大家抽出宝贵的时间来讨论这件重要的题目。
Thank you, Ina. Is there anything else that you wanted to say, or are you good now?
Yeah, so just like I have no exact agenda or intention of this speech. I don't excuse me. I don't mean to target anybody. I have no hate towards race. It just the anti-Asian racism has been invisible for a very long time, especially towards international students, and I just felt like this was a good topic to bring up to general meeting for council and assembly attendees to discuss about. And what the final decision is up to council to decide. I just wanted to share my thoughts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I noticed that Jay has joined the chat. Jay, would you like to speak? We can get your permission changed so you're able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Sorry, I'll just have another meeting.
No worries.
Project. Thank you so much for bringing this to the council. Thank you, Ina, for your speech. Is very touching. Sorry, although I only heard the last part of your speech. A large number of Asian Canadians reach out to me. They feel that the current equity services cannot represent them, and this issue I think should be addressed by WUSA. And as an incoming WUSA mass counselor, I would like to address this issue to the assembly, and hopefully I know it's a. I also saw lots of negative comments on Reddit. Most of them are not true. I know Raise and other equity service, they already did their best to help everyone in the Waterloo community. But as I said, they feel they are underrepresented. And I think just Raise and can work with other minority groups or Asians and other people to improve their services and truly represent everyone. Okay, this concludes my speech. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. I did not realize that. So next up, sorry, thank you, Jay. Next up, we have Vicky with a direct response, and then we have Megan and Steph. So can we get Vicky some permissions?
Hello, I just would like to also reiterate, although I'm not an international student as I was born in North America and I'm a dual citizen of both the US and Canada, I've experienced racism even because I'm half Japanese and people are still not over the whole World War II thing, and neither is the Japanese community fully. So I'd just like to note that it is true that racism has stemmed for a lot of time. I understand it's mostly Chinese right now, but I know Japanese and probably any other culture of Asian descent has also experienced it at some point in time.
Thank you. We have Megan for a new point, followed by Steph for a new point. Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you, Speaker. I just wanted to start out by thanking everyone who has already spoken for sharing their experiences with us today. On behalf of the executive, I'm not looking to respond here and say, look, we've done X, Y, Z, or this has been going on already, because I want to acknowledge that the concerns that folks have raised today are very valid, and we're not looking to kind of discredit them in any way. Instead, we'd like to just kind of take the time here to listen to what folks have to say. We will have fantastic notes and a recording of this meeting that we can use in the future when we strive to address this topic. I would encourage anyone who feels comfortable sharing their experiences to do so today, but also noting that this is an extremely public setting. I would also say that we can commit to continuing these conversations offline and building a plan moving forward to ensure that all racially marginalized students, and particularly Asian students, feel comfortable, feel supported by WUSA and WUSA's Racialized Student Service, and feel welcome at the University of Waterloo. I think the last thing, sorry, that I wanted to say, I just have some notes in front of me so I don't forget. The last thing that I wanted to say is that I think that people's statements here today have demonstrated that we have failed to do these things in terms of supporting students and creating a safe environment for them. So I would just like to kind of acknowledge that we hear that, and would like to work together to try and do better in the future, just as we've been trying to do all year when students bring forward concerns to us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Megan. Next up, we have Steph.
Hi there. I think that the concerns students have around the perception that RAISE is not supporting all minority groups as Rich should, that it's, I guess fixing it is very complicated for a variety of reasons. I think that the volunteers at RAISE are committed and that they've done great work, except really getting there depends on a lot of things. But I guess just like, I think it's important for me to bring up and mention as we try and figure out a solution towards this, that that this isn't the first time in which this concern has specifically been brought up. I do remember expressing to council the opinion of various constituents that that they weren't being supported, that they didn't feel as if RAISE represented them, and I do believe and I hope that steps were taken to have conversations with RAISE regarding those concerns, such that they could develop a plan and begin working towards better representation. But I think that's a very difficult thing to do when you're not always going to make everyone happy in that regard. I'm not really sure how to suggest how to go forward from here, but I do think what Megan said, it resonates with me, and I do think that we need to begin having dialogue and conversations with students, and I thank both Jay and Yichen for calling attention to this and bringing this to light. Yeah, so I guess that's all I wanted to say on that matter.
Okay, thank you, Steph. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to the item? Point of information from Chanel? Or one. If you're not sure whether it's a point of information, you could just take your speaking turn. Point of information first, then we'll ask for a response from Jay.
Sorry, I just had a question. I know there was discussions of possibly compensating the Raise volunteers. I just wanted to ask if that has happened, or is Raise still all volunteers?
I'm going to direct that to the executive to answer.
I can answer. The coordinators of the student-run service are paid part-time staff, whereas the rest of the executive team and volunteers are unpaid and are holding volunteer positions on behalf of the organization.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, and we'll now move to Jay for a direct response to Stephanie Yamo, and then we'll have a sponsored student at large. So go ahead, Jay.
Thank you, Michael. As someone just said, maybe improvement for Raise and other advocacy services, it takes times. I know, of course, it takes times. I know, like this term of WUSA counselors and executive will end next month. I think this could be written in the long-term plan, and I would happy to work with executives beginning this May. That's my response. Just let you know, like I will be sitting on the mass concourse starting in May. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a direct response to that from Stephanie.
Hi. I think. Okay. Well, I guess like a couple things to say on that matter as an incoming exec. With regards to the long range plan, that's specifically something that's already written, I think, for to last for 5 years. As the incoming exec, they prepare an annual plan, which we're in the process of doing so now. And I think I can speak for my team when I say that we would love to talk to you, and we can talk about possible inclusion of items regarding that within our annual plan to hold us accountable for making sure this issue was addressed. I think more in the case of, I guess the best way I see this moving forward would be with the services review that is currently happening and will be concluded in December. Catherine, the incoming VPSL, also has an idea regarding creating, I guess, certain advocacy goals and long-range plans for the services. So I think that would probably be one of the more appropriate and impactful places. I will invite Catherine, I guess, to speak to specifics on that either now or to contact you thereafter. But yeah, just I guess to provide additional information.
Okay, direct response by Catherine.
Just responding in that capacity as incoming VPSL, I am currently still in the middle of being transitioned, so I'm not quite privy to every single detail of what's going on yet. But as Steph mentioned, I do have intentions to begin the implementation of some different approaches to how advocacy and goal setting works in the services, and that's certainly something that I'll be looking for student feedback on as we implement them. I've been part of the services review through the Internal Administration Committee and the Campus Life Advisory Committee. And I do know that there has been progress, and I have ideas as well on how to not quite expedite, but certainly hopefully look into implementation and student consultation sooner rather than later. I know that current executives have a plan, and I want to make sure that we're staying on course for what our intentions were, and part of that plan is student consultation. So I'll make sure to have you, Jay, on that list of students to reach out to in terms of individual students who have offered help. And if anyone else feels similarly, absolutely feel free to email me. It's just catherine.dong@uwaterloo.ca. And otherwise, I know that our current executives, while very swamped, are also very helpful, wonderful people. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Now I'm seeing Vincent moving and Megan seconding, sponsoring Yang. I'm going to take that just on consensus. So can we give Yang some speaking rights?
Hello. I'd just like to contribute my experiences as a Chinese person regarding WUSA. Well, in particular, race, because I feel like over my time here at the university, race has been very prominent to me. I hear a lot about what they do, especially for the Black and Indigenous community, as was previously discussed. But and I'm sure they're doing great there. But I have never once felt like race had properly represented either me or anyone else like who was Asian. That's just my experiences there.
Okay, thank you, Yang. In the interest of continuing to move the discussion along in a positive light, I would ask that we focus on not on necessarily just calling out all the things that Rays might have done improperly or not, and just focus on what can be done moving forward, just to give the executives a little bit of meat, something to sink their teeth into and actually work on. And if you want to bring up past experiences, that's totally fine too. Is there, okay, Vincent, direct response?
Actually, my direct response was to what you said, Chair. I want to say, I don't think you can really talk about how to move forward without talking about what's went wrong.
Certainly. I just don't want what went wrong to be the entire focus of conversation. I think it's more helpful if we can talk about what can be done moving forward. I have Steph, direct response, and then Catherine Newpoint.
Sorry. I couldn't figure out whether I was muted or not. While I agree with Vincent on some level, I do think that on some level, race should be present for these conversations and should be given the opportunity to kind of respond and speak to these things. I err more in support of what Michael said regarding not, I guess, focusing on specific actions where things went wrong. I would also, I guess, say that I feel like some of these conversations and the consultation for this might be better suited for in either what Megan proposed earlier or some of what I've proposed. That's not to say don't discuss these things here, but I guess I guess be mindful of that.
Thank you, Steph. New points from Catherine and then Cannon.
I suppose this is a rather small detail, but I do want to bring to attention and highlight something that I think is important, which is the decoupling of mistreating people based on their race and ethnicity versus having negative opinions about a country or a place sort of thing. I think that especially in light of recent events between COVID and hate crimes and some politics and justice system things going on and potential human rights violations, that we do need to be cautious that we can talk about caring for people in their capacity as students and Asian folks, and decoupling that from our capacity to talk about countries and governments and their actions, and that, as far as I'm aware, there can be confusion between those at times, and making sure that both people who are talking about it and people who may be hurt by it are able to address those two things separately.
Thank you, Catherine. We move to Cannon.
I'm just gonna say, kind of jumping off Steph's point, these conversations are important, and while we obviously like to hear input from our at-large students, I think this is a conversation which is better suited at council, especially with the service review being undergoing under their direction. And I'm more than happy to talk to any at-large student who has any concerns about service review or just anti-racism efforts on WUSA's behalf, and bring it up at council or to the respective service. And I also agree, like, if we are talking about how race has not been able to represent certain marginalized groups in the past, I think they need to be here to listen to these comments and also give their viewpoint on these. So I believe if the assembly is okay, we should move on with this.
Thank you. Next on my speaking list, I have Catherine. And then Chanel immediately afterwards. Go ahead, Catherine.
I'd also just like to note that this conversation's been going on for a while, and as multiple people have noted, that this might not always be the most appropriate forum for certain types of conversation to go on, and we are over time, that I would ask for this conversation to be concluded by 4:30.
Okay, so you are moving to set the time of adjournment to 4:30 p.m. Can I get a seconder? Okay, seconded by Nick. And is there anyone who is opposed to setting the time of adjournment to 4:30 specifically? Any abstentions? Okay, so I am seeing 3 abstentions, or 2 abstentions. So the motion carries unanimously with 2 abstentions. If anyone would like their vote noted, please put it in the chat. But time of adjournment is set to 4:30 p.m. We have Chanel next on the speaking list, and you have 4 minutes, potentially the entire rest of the meeting.
No pressure. So I want to just quickly thank everyone who's brought their experiences and concerns here. I think this is a very important discussion. While I'm not an Asian who is directly affected by this, as an Asian, I definitely have experienced my own sort of racism, so I thank everyone for this discussion. But the main concern of my point is that I do want to mention that previously from council, we definitely had some, I guess, hinderment towards a lot of Raise's concerns, supports, and inquiries towards us, in their asking for extra support, etc. So I do want us to keep this in mind, realizing while I also may not completely feel as if I'm represented by Raise, I also do understand that being a council member, being on like my own student union as a student myself, it can definitely be hard to do a lot of meaningful work, being a volunteer itself. So I am looking forward to having a lot of conversations in the future with a lot of different plans on how we can bring our concerns to RAISE and find different ways that we can also support RAISE as WUSA, as members of WUSA council, to, I guess, support students better and to allow us to support more marginalized students other than their current capacity. But once again, I do want to thank everyone for bringing this discussion. This is something I can definitely relate to and I'm looking forward to.
Okay, thank you, Chanel. In the interest of time, I'm going to cap the speakers list at where it currently stands, with Abby and Edward speaking next in direct responses. After that point, we will move for the adjournment of the meeting. Go ahead, Abby.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to further echo that comment of providing some more supports to our student services to be able to move forward with some of the additional tasks that we're asking them to perform on our behalf, and potentially taking a look at the way that the organization is able to support anti-racism work of any kind moving forward.
Point of information, Vincent.
Hi, so just to clarify, because I'm a little confused, is anyone here right now, like, that was speaking, I guess, like, here to represent RAISE or like a RAISE volunteer or anything like that?
To my knowledge, there's nobody here specifically representing RAISE. If they were, they would probably have had to have been invited, like, as a service to this meeting, which I don't think happened. So your best bet is to invite RAISE to a council meeting if you want to speak to RAISE directly.
Okay, thank you.
Edward, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to echo what Chanel said, that we definitely need to work with RAISE more to provide them with the resources if we want them to carry out their duties more effectively. We can't leave it at do better. We need to also, as council in the next year, like Abby said, work towards how can we more effectively support our services? How can we protect our volunteers? How can we bring these topics to light and have a positive discussions about them? And I'm looking forward to how that goes over the next governing year.
Thank you. We have just hit 4:30, so thank you all for this discussion. I am sure that it's going to continue at council. I think that we heard some commitments from members like Kenan to bring the discussion to ensure that it continues at council. So I don't think that we need to make a motion right now to force it to carry over to council. But if there is no more discussion, we have exhausted the business of the day, and we can adjourn at 4:30. Can I get a mover and seconder to adjourn? Just because I think it's fun. Abby moves.
Second.
Who was that seconding?
Cannon.
Cannon seconds. Okay, so moved by Abby, seconded by Cannon. I'm going to take this on consensus. I don't see any opposition. Everyone, thank you all for the time that you have dedicated to this meeting, both in advance and during the actual on-site time today. Go on and enjoy your days. Enjoy your weekends.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye, everyone.
Corey, if you're still on the call, are we able to change the settings to ensure that the chat does not carry over after the meeting is finished?
Yeah. Do we need to, can we stop recording now, or do we?
Yes, we can stop recording.